My name is Tyler Darnell. I'm 26 and a lighting tech based in Seoul. For the longest time, I was just another shadow in the city, an invisible piece in the backdrop of something much bigger. My life was ordinary, almost forgettable. Sleep, subway rides, climbing scaffolding, day in, day out. The world spun around me while I stayed exactly where I was until the biggest K-pop idol in the country kissed me. Don't touch the idol. That was the rule. An unspoken law woven into every backstage briefing, murmured in every crew meeting, carved into the air like scripture. You keep your hands to yourself. You stay professional. You bury the daydreams so deep they never see light. In this city, K-pop idols weren't just celebrities. They were untouchable constellations. Perfect from a distance, impossible up close. They are gods. And gods? They don't fall. You don't reach for them. You worship. Quietly. Everyone knew it. Everyone followed it. Well, except me. Because somewhere between all those shows, all those fleeting exchanges, passing him a mic, holding open a side door, catching his smile across a crowded after-party, I'd stopped thinking of him as the idol and started thinking of him as Jihoon. The way he laughed a beat too late when he was tired, how his fingers drummed against his thigh in rehearsals, always the same restless rhythm, the little wince when he came off stage and thought no one was looking. I told myself it was harmless, just noticing, just admiration, but that wasn't the truth. I was crushing hard, the kind of crush that pressed against my ribs whenever he walked by, that rewired my pulse when our eyes met. So when he kissed me, oh, that first unforgettable kiss, it didn't feel wrong at all. It felt inevitable, like every small moment before it had been conspiring to lead right here. I didn't think about the rule. I didn't think about the consequences. I thought about how close he was, how his breath hit my cheek, how every part of me screamed not to waste the chance. And then the flash went off. That's when I knew my life was never going to be the same. Hey Daydreamers, thanks for tuning in. If you are liking this story so far, tell us where you are listening from in the comment section and hit the subscribe and notification button so you don't miss any story uploads. Let's continue. It was a Sunday night when it happened, deep in the heart of the MBS Dome, where the after-show hush settled like thick fog over the stadium's bones. The crowd had long since dissipated, leaving only the soft echoes of fading conversations and the slow rhythm of crew members packing up. Most of the crew had cleared out an hour ago, sound engineers, the lighting team, the roadies, everyone eager to get home after another late-night show. All that was left were the hollow clatter of wheels over concrete, the occasional groan of a cooling spotlight rig, and the low hum of exhaustion that seemed to seep into the very air. I was still here, like always, packing cables into a case marked with my initials TD, my fingers mechanically tying them in neat loops, my mind lost in the rhythm of the task. The MBS Dome had been home to me for the past few years, not in a literal sense of course, but in every way that counted. I didn't mind the late nights. It was what I signed up for. There was a certain peace in the steady routine of packing away the mess left after a show, the tangled wires, the discarded set pieces, the spilled coffee cups. The chaos of the performance was over, and I could finally breathe. But tonight, something felt different. I felt it before I heard it, the way the hairs on the back of my neck lifted, like a warning from deep inside me, not from the cold, but from something else. Something instinctual. You know that feeling? The one that shoots up your spine when someone's watching you, even before you turn around to check. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned, almost against my will. There he was, standing a few feet away from me, Kang Jihoon. The name alone could make an entire room go quiet. If you're breathing in South Korea and half the Western Hemisphere, you've heard it screamed from rooftops, concert pits, and through every social media feed. Kang Jihoon, the lead vocalist of Iris, the crown jewel of HNJ Entertainment. 6 years at the top, 3 platinum albums, and face of a dozen brands. He was the epitome of K-pop royalty, charismatic, untouchable, and feared by those who admired him. Eyes like sorrow, voice like a wound you didn't know you had until he sang it wide open, making the world forget its own heartbeat. Kang Jihoon wasn't just famous. He wasn't just a star. He was a movement, a phenomenon. He was a name, a face, a force that powered the pulse of an entire industry. And he was standing there, 10 feet from me, looking just as unreal as I always imagined. He still wore his stage persona, like a shroud, oversized black jacket with a silver-threaded phoenix flaring across the back. The kind of design that made you feel like you were staring at fire and sky. Loose black pants that shimmered like oil under the spotlight, as if the world around him bent to his will. His hair was damp, tousled from the final encore, and his lips were parted slightly, as if the last note hadn't even left his body yet. He looked like a fever dream, something half-formed, unreal. "Did you forget something? Everyone's gone," I called without looking up. When I glanced over, Jihoon had started walking closer to me. Jacket shrugged up to reveal a white round neck top, a strand of damp hair curling against his temple. His stage makeup was smudged just enough to make him look human again, still devastating, but softer around the edges. This wasn't the first time we'd spoken. We'd exchanged dozens of "good job" and "see you tomorrow" over months. And there was that Hosik night, when he took the entire crew out for barbecue after our 3-day run at Olympic Gymnastics Arena. He'd clinked his glass with mine then, grinning like we were already old friends. But tonight, tonight felt different. No. Nothing, he said now, strolling toward me like he had all the time in the world. Cool, I replied, keeping my eyes on the cable. My hands remembered their work. My heartbeat didn't. This wasn't just nerves from standing near a celebrity. This was months of stolen glances, of letting my gaze linger too long when I thought he wasn't looking. You smoke? He asked suddenly. I looked up. His voice, low, husky from the set, pulled me right out of my head. Trying to quit, I said, though I'd never started. He flicked open a slim silver lighter. For an instant, the flame carved his features into sharp gold lines, and then it was gone, leaving only the faint curl of smoke between us. He leaned against the scaffolding, eyes half-lidded, exhale slow. TD? He asked after a beat, nodding toward my case. You carve your initials into your wire casing? Yeah, I said, brushing my thumb over the carved letters like they were worth more than the plastic casing they were etched into. Makes me feel like a rock star. You know, like a guitarist with his old beat-up case. Inscripted history, something that says, I've been places. The words hung between us for a moment. From somewhere down the empty corridor, a door slammed, the sound bouncing off the bare concrete. Jihoon didn't flinch. He was still looking at the case, then at me, his gaze dragging slow like he was reading something only he could see. He tilted his head just a fraction, the way you do when you're listening for a note you're not sure you heard. A loose strand of hair fell over his brow, catching the edge of the overhead light. His eyes flicked from the case to my face and back again, measuring, weighing. You think it's silly, don't you? I asked, my voice lighter than I felt. I tried for casual, but there was a small, uninvited hope in the question, like a kid waiting for a teacher's approval. His head shook once, slow, deliberate. No. He paused just long enough for me to feel the weight of the word before he let the corner of his mouth lift into something dangerously close to a real smile. It's cute, actually. Cute. The word slid into my chest like a coin into a deep, dark well, spinning, until the sound of it hitting the bottom was swallowed by silence. My pulse stuttered, then kicked into a new rhythm, one that made me suddenly aware of the small space between us. From him, it didn't feel like a throwaway comment. It felt deliberate, personal, like he'd chosen that word the way he chose the notes he sang, knowing exactly what it would do to the person hearing it. I had never once in my life thought of myself as cute. Not my face, not my voice, not anything about me. But now, with Jihoon standing this close, the faint scent of his cologne threading through the faint cigarette smoke curling above us, I couldn't stop replaying it in my head. He called me cute. God, I was already in trouble. He came closer, crouching beside me to pick up one of the lighting cables. His fingers moved over it with casual precision. Lights were perfect tonight, he said. Timing was spot on. Really? I should be saying that to you. You guys were on fire out there, more than usual. He shrugged. We weren't in sync. Could have been better. I laughed, straightening. You're insane. You are the definition of perfection out there. You don't need me feeding your ego. I don't have an ego, he said, mock offended, and I'm far from perfect. I snorted, stacking the last of the gear. Don't let your fans hear you say that. They'll lose their minds. They worship you. His eyes found mine, steady. Yeah? Really? I know they do, I said, sliding the crate into storage. But you know who else does? He leaned against the doorframe, waiting. Who? The crew, I said, leaning one shoulder against the wall. You make our jobs easier. You notice us and respect us. That matters more than you probably think. Something shifted in his expression just for a heartbeat. Not quite pride, but something warmer, softer, like I'd caught him off guard in a way he didn't mind. He didn't say thank you. He didn't step away either. Instead, his gaze stayed on me, steady enough that I had to glance down at the case in my hands just to break the pull. How's your leg? I asked. You were slightly limping earlier. One eyebrow lifted, the barest hint of amusement. You noticed that? Yeah. He cut in, the corner of his mouth twitching like he was holding back something sharper. So you are watching me. Not just in my head then. My throat went dry. What do you mean? I see you, he said, voice low as he walked closer to me. Every time, your eyes, always watching me. I swallowed, shifting my grip on the case. It's my job. No, it's not, especially not in the way you look at me. The words landed heavier than I expected, not teasing exactly, more like he was naming something I'd been trying not to put into words myself. He wasn't wrong. From the shadows, I'd watched him transform into something elemental, fluid and fierce, a storm in human form. He moved like every step was an unspoken confession, like he might break apart at any second but somehow never did. Watching him wasn't just part of my job, but I have never been able to take my eyes off him. I didn't answer. That's when he stepped even closer, and the air between us shifted, tighter, denser. I caught the scent of smoke clinging to him, threaded with the faint, clean sweetness of his cologne. His eyes were darker up close, the stage lights long gone, replaced with something quieter but more dangerous. And then, no warning, no preamble, he kissed me. It wasn't gentle, and it wasn't cautious. It was the sharp spark at the end of a long fuse, all heat and pressure, and that strange, frantic undertow I'd felt building all night. By the time I registered what was happening, he'd already pulled back half a step, just enough space for me to breathe, to think, to choose. My pulse was hammering. Shock hit first, and then something hotter took over. I closed the gap and kissed him back. He tasted like honey and blood, like the sharp edge of too much rehearsed perfection finally cracking open. I felt his breath, fast and shallow, the way his chest pressed into mine, the subtle tremble in his hands as he gripped my jacket like he was scared I'd disappear if he let go. And my body? It betrayed me. I kissed him back like I'd been waiting to all my life, not just weeks of watching him from the catwalks, not just the months of studying his face lit by LEDs and lasers, but something deeper, as if I'd spent years not knowing I was thirsty until he found my mouth and poured himself in. There was a low sound in his throat, almost a whimper, as I slid a hand up into his hair, wet from sweat, soft and silky. The stadium melted around us. My pulse thudded in my ears, my skin electric with contact. All I could feel was him, the shape of his lips, the way he leaned into me, the smallest hitch in his breath that made him feel suddenly terribly human. My other hand slid up instinctively, curling against the warm line of his neck. My fingers splayed like I was holding on for dear life, anchoring him to me, or maybe myself to him. His skin was hot beneath my touch, and his breath shuddered against my lips. He kissed like a man with no map for tomorrow, like this was the only moment worth existing in. There was hunger there, yes, but threaded with something rawer, loneliness, relief, a plea neither of us dared to name, and I let him. God, I let him. I leaned into it, tasting smoke and sweat, and the faint sweet bite of whatever cologne he wore. I thought if I just stayed here, kept kissing him, maybe the rest of the world would dissolve. But the world didn't dissolve. The world snapped back with a sharp click, a burst of white from stage left, quick as lightning but impossible to miss. Jihoon tore himself away, breath ragged, eyes blown wide. Shit. The word was barely a whisper, but it hit like a shout. And just like that, the air changed. The kiss was no longer just a kiss. It was evidence. It wasn't intimacy anymore. It was a crime. The phone started vibrating just after 5 a.m., and it didn't stop. I hadn't slept all night. I hadn't even moved. I was still on the couch, fully clothed, jacket half on, staring at the blank TV screen like it might rewind time if I looked hard enough. The event of last night keeps replaying over my head with a mix of emotions. At first it was excitement from the unreal occurrence that might as well be a dream come true, and the fear that it might eventually become a nightmare. Someone was definitely there. That was the sound of a picture being taken. It was unmistaken, and if anyone knows that sound too well, it's Jihoon. And someone had caught him kissing me. A guy. The city outside my window was still dark. Only the occasional taxi passed below, headlights flashing against the damp glass like distant lightning. Seoul never truly slept. But for a moment it felt like it was holding its breath with me. My phone rattled across the table again at 6 a.m. Unknown number. But I could already guess who it was. My fingers felt like ice as I picked up. "Mr. Darnell?" The voice on the other end was crisp and cold, like metal in the mouth. The voice on the other side was female, British-tinted Korean. The kind of voice that didn't ask, it delivered verdicts. "Your presence is required at HNJ Entertainment, immediately." No greeting, no explanation, just the verbal equivalent of a death sentence, clean and sharp. The call ended before I could respond. I stood there, the phone still warm against my palm, feeling the tremor in my hands before I even registered it. I washed my face in the kitchen sink, water running colder than I meant it to, splashing over my shirt. Brushed my teeth until the bristles were streaked with pink. Changed my shirt twice, ended up in the first one I'd picked. I didn't bother with cologne. Why sent yourself for the gallows? HNJ's tower rose out of Gangnam's skyline like a blade, steel and glass honed to an edge, slicing the sky. It had always felt sterile, airtight, a place where the oxygen was rationed to those who mattered. Today, it felt like walking into a predator's open mouth. The lobby was hushed, so polished you could see yourself in the marble underfoot if you wanted to. I didn't. Even the receptionists, perfect hair and perfect smiles, didn't look up as the security guard in a black suit beckoned me forward with a flick of his fingers. The elevator was a capsule of silence. 21 floors of it, broken only by the faint hum of machinery and the uncomfortable pop in my ears. When the doors slid open, the air changed. Thinner, sharper. I passed familiar faces in pencil skirts, tailored suits, watches that could buy small apartments, PR heads, legal vultures, people who could ruin you without raising their voices. Not one of them looked at me. That was worse than glares. The conference room door stood open. Inside, the air smelled faintly of jasmine layered over bleach, something soft struggling to mask something harsh. The table was long, lacquered, cold enough to hold its own reflection. Jihoon sat at the far end, alone. The overhead lights bleached him out, making his skin look almost translucent. He was dressed down, plain white hoodie, the kind you'd wear to disappear, but the hood was down, hair falling into his eyes. He wasn't looking at me. He wasn't looking at anyone. His gaze was fixed somewhere far beyond the walls, anchored to a point only he could see. Opposite him, a row of suits waited, motionless, composed, their presence as heavy as a locked door. They didn't speak, didn't even bother to feign polite interest. The air around them felt thick with decisions already made. 4 of them in total, all dressed in the same unyielding black. At the far left, an older man whose face seemed carved from weathered marble, every crease a testament to decades of not being told no. Beside him, a younger man with immaculate hair and eyes so flat and lifeless they might as well have been painted on. But it was the woman in the center who drew my gaze. Silver blazer tailored sharp enough to cut, red lacquered nails resting against the table's edge. Her phone lay face down beside a matte leather folder, a deliberate gesture that said she didn't need to be distracted. She had already assessed everything that mattered. The look she gave me wasn't hostile. Not exactly. It was worse. She looked at me the way you look at a stain you've already decided you can scrub out if you even bother. "Mr. Darnell," she said, folding her hands. "You know who we are." It shouldn't have taken much to guess why I was there, with Jihoon sitting silently at the end of the table like a condemned prince. The tension in the room was a living thing, coiled and brittle, buzzing beneath the veneer of expensive suits and forced civility. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. "Yes," I said finally. My voice was low. "I do, and I want to say I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," she snapped, like the word itself offended her. "You don't get to do that yet." Her eyes glinted, hard, cold, and precise. "Do you understand what you've done? You violated your contract. You breached every code of conduct this company upholds. We don't care if it was a whisper, a look, a thought, you crossed the line, and now we're in damage control because of you." She tilted her head, studying me. "Was this premeditated, Mr. Darnell?" The words hit harder than I expected. I blinked, caught off guard. "Premeditated?" She leaned forward, tone cool and clinical. "Were you working with someone? Hoping to sell the footage? Leak it to the press? Was this a coordinated attempt to damage this agency or our artist?" Each accusation landed like a blow. My heart raced faster with every word. "No," I said quickly. "No, absolutely not. I didn't plan anything. I didn't know anyone was watching. I wasn't working with anyone. I didn't even know a camera was there. It felt like I was drowning in the middle of the room, and everyone was watching me go under." I looked at Jihoon, searched for anything. His eyes, a twitch, a breath, a sign that he might speak. Still nothing. His silence wrapped itself around my throat. My mouth opened, but no sound came. My pulse roared in my ears. I looked at Jihoon again, pleading silently for a sign, a glance, a shift in expression. Still nothing. And that silence said everything. I felt the floor drop out beneath me. Panic crawled up my spine, cold and wet. My stomach tightened like it was folding in on itself. I wanted to disappear, to run, to scream. My hands were damp, my throat raw. This was the moment, the one where everything fractures. I swallowed. He kissed me. She didn't blink, didn't even glance his way. "That won't be the story, Mr. Darnell." A pen slid across the table, its silver body catching the cold light above. Beside it lay the NDA. 10 pages of tightly packed text, the kind of language that didn't just ask for a signature, but demanded the quiet burial of everything you'd been before you stepped into this room. Her voice was precise, each word clipped clean like the snip of scissors through thread. "You will sign. You will erase any copies. You will delete anything that ties you to this building, this artist, this agency. And then, a deliberate pause, you will disappear." My pulse thundered in my ears. "This isn't fair," I said, and even as the words left my mouth, I knew how powerless they sounded. She smiled, not kindly, but the way you smile at a child who doesn't understand how the world works. "Fairness," she said, tilting her head slightly, "is for people with power." My eyes went to Jihoon. He sat like stone, hood shadowing his face, hands clasped loosely in front of him. Still, silent, but not empty. His jaw was tight, a muscle shifting like it wanted to speak, and had been trained not to. His fingers tapped once against his knee, so small a movement it could have been nothing, except I knew him well enough to recognize it as the only sign he was restless, or angry, or afraid. I waited for him to lift his head, to throw his voice into the space between us and shatter this cold theater, to say my name, to say anything, but his eyes didn't meet mine. When they did flicker up, it was quick, like a dangerous truth had slipped between us and been swallowed before anyone else could see. My fingers hovered over the pen. It was heavier than it should have been, as if it carried the weight of not just my name, but every unspoken thing he wasn't allowed to say. My heartbeat slowed, no longer the quick drum of defiance but a low, mourning toll for a life I hadn't realized I was already losing. I wanted to fight. I wanted to tell them this wasn't what they thought it was. But in this room, explanations were useless. This was a place where truth didn't matter. Only silence, obedience, erasure. My name was nothing here. My voice was nothing here. And Jihoon, whatever his reasons, whatever was written in the tension of his jaw, he couldn't be mine in this room either. I looked at him one last time. A flicker passed in his eyes. Quick, sharp, gone. And then there was nothing. I picked up the pen. The paper took my name in its teeth, and when I set it down, it felt like I'd signed away not just the moment, but him. And right there at that moment, I felt my entire world crumbled. I had just lost my job and signed an NDA not to breath a word of what happened to anyone. One kiss had caused me everything. This is nothing short of a nightmare. The days that followed blurred into one empty reality, and I stopped counting them after 3. Sleep came in fragments. Short, jagged hours where my body shut down but my mind kept sprinting. I couldn't close my eyes without seeing Jihoon's face, not the one from the stage or the posters, but the one from the conference table. Empty, silent. The city moved on around me. Neon signs blinked. Subway announcements droned. Street food sizzled on metal trays. Seoul didn't stop for broken things. I stopped answering my phone. My manager tried, once. A short message, then nothing. It didn't matter. The agency was thorough. They wouldn't need to fire me. They'd just erase me. Every time I thought about that room, I felt the nausea rise again. That woman's voice, sharp and cold. The pen. The paper. Jihoon, quiet as a corpse. I hated myself for how much I still wanted to see him. I hated him more for letting me. I mean, you just don't get over someone you have been having massive crush on for months kissing you even when it turns out that they are nothing short of a coward, too scared to take responsibility. Okay, now I was just being unreasonable. Then, 4 days after the meeting, my doorbell rang. It was 2:14 a.m. I was sitting on the floor, back against the kitchen cabinets, a half-eaten container of takeout forgotten beside me. I didn't move at first, thought maybe I imagined it. It rang again. Slowly I stood. When I opened the door, Jihoon was standing there, hood up, face mask on. Drenched from head to toe, his chest rising like he'd just run 10 blocks. I didn't say anything. Neither did he. He pushed inside quickly, pulling the mask off only once the door had closed behind him. He looked terrible, pale, haunted. The air between us sparked with something I couldn't name. He walked past me into the apartment and stopped like the room belonged to someone else. "You came through the front?" I asked, leaning on the door frame. "Or were you hoping to get caught this time?" He didn't answer, just kept his gaze fixed on the floor, rain dripping from the edge of his hood. "How do you even know where I live?" I started, then shook my head. "Never mind, you shouldn't be here." "I had to," he said. His English was careful, each word carrying the weight of someone thinking it through in another language first. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I crossed my arms. "Bit late for that, don't you think?" He flinched, and for a moment I thought he might turn around and leave. Instead, he pulled back the hood. His hair was plastered to his forehead, strands clinging to the curve of his cheek. The fabric of his hoodie was darkened from the rain, and when he shifted, I caught sight of a bruise blooming purple beneath his collarbone. "I thought they'd protect you," he said quietly. "I thought staying quiet would be safest for both of us." "You thought wrong." My voice was sharper than I intended, but I didn't take it back. His eyes lifted to mine then, wet in a way that wasn't from the rain. I know that now. I was scared." He sank onto the edge of my couch, his shoulders curving inward like he was trying to make himself smaller. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. The words were too easy, too fragile against the memory of that conference room. "I should have said something. I should have protected you," he went on, his voice fraying at the edges. "But I've spent so long living inside rules other people made for me. Contracts, managers, choreography, that I forgot how to be anything outside of them." I dropped into the chair opposite him, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. "Then why now?" I asked. "Why risk this? Why are you here?" His hands twisted together in his lap. He hesitated, then looked at me in a way that made it hard to breathe. "Because when everything else feels like a stage," he said softly, "you're the only thing that doesn't feel like an act." I didn't trust my mouth to speak without saying something I'd regret, so I just looked at him instead. Rainwater clung to his skin, tracing slow paths along his jaw. His eyes were red. Not from crying, I thought, but from holding back the kind of tears he refused to let fall in front of anyone. He didn't look like someone who'd just lost control. He looked like someone who'd finally chosen to. And now he was here, in my apartment, breathing my air, bringing the storm in with him. It was dangerous to make assumptions about what that meant, about what he wanted, about what I wanted. I wasn't ready to imagine a version of this where I misunderstood him, or where I was just a safe place to hide until the rain stopped. "You should shower," I said finally, because it was the only thing that came out. "You smell like Gangnam rain and regret." His mouth twitched into the faintest smile as if he was grateful for the levity, and without another word he disappeared down the hall I had pointed out to him. The sound of the bathroom door clicking shut left the apartment too quiet. I went into my wardrobe and picked out some clothes, then lay them at the entrance so he could change, then went back to my couch and sat down. My fingers gripping the edge of the cushion, my thoughts spinning out in a dozen dangerous directions. He was here. That fact alone felt louder than anything else. When he returned, a towel looped around his neck, he was wearing a pair of my oldest sweatpants and a faded graphic tee that had survived at least 4 moves. They hung loose on him, softening his edges. The bruise beneath his collarbone was still there, a muted shadow against his skin, but the ghostliness had lifted. He rubbed at his damp hair and lowered himself onto the couch across from me, and for a moment it felt like the storm outside had followed him in and was now just sitting here, waiting to see what we'd do next. He sat there, still rubbing the towel at the ends of his damp hair, water dripping onto my living room rug like he didn't even notice. The bruise at his collarbone caught my eye again, deep, mottled, like someone had pressed a thumb too hard and left a piece of themselves behind. I wanted to ask where it came from. I didn't. Some truths had to walk in on their own time. "Why did you kiss me?" My voice came out quieter than I intended, but it was the question that had been stuck in my throat since that night. Jihoon didn't flinch, didn't look away. Because I wanted to, he said. No theatrics, no coyness, just the words, steady and unpolished. Because the moment came, and if I let it pass, I knew I'd regret it. I frowned. That's it? He leaned forward a little, elbows resting on his knees, the towel slipping from one hand. His eyes didn't leave mine, but his voice dropped lower, like this was something he'd never said out loud before. I've been thinking about you since the first time I saw you. It was, 3 years ago. That Hosik after the year-end concert. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. You were telling this story, something about hauling a stage light up 3 flights of stairs because the freight elevator broke. I remembered. Everyone had laughed. I'd just been trying to fill the dead air between rounds of soju. You didn't brag about it. You didn't complain. You just told it like it was a stupid, ordinary thing. And I thought, he broke off, shaking his head. All I could think is that this Hyung is so cool. His gaze flicked briefly to the floor, then back to me. After that I started watching you. At first it was just curiosity. Then I began noticing things, how you moved backstage, how you always found the calm in the chaos. And then, he hesitated, almost like he was weighing whether to keep going. Then I caught the way you were looking at me sometimes. Like you wanted to look away but couldn't. And once I saw that, I couldn't stop looking back. I sat back, trying to process the idea that the man who could barely walk 2 steps in public without a wall of bodyguards had been what? Noticing me, watching me. My brain tripped over itself like it was reading the script for some ridiculous K-drama. This doesn't happen. Not to people like me. If this is a dream, I'm not sure I want to wake up. I sat back, stunned. A laugh escaped me, dry, disbelieving. Are you for real, man? You're Jihoon, you could have anyone. I'm serious, he cut in. And there was no doubt in his tone. I thought I could hold it in. I thought I could just watch you from the shadows like we both did. But that night backstage, I snapped. It took everything in me not to kiss you sooner. I swallowed hard. The air between us felt heavier, pressing against my ribs. I nodded, slow. Then why didn't you say anything after? Why leave me alone in that room, like I was some parasite trying to ruin your life? He looked down, shame flushing his cheeks. Because I was ashamed. Not of you, of me. That I let myself want something they told me I wasn't allowed to want. That I broke their rules. That I let you take the fall because I didn't know how to stand up for either of us. He looked up then, and there was nothing left in his eyes but truth. He shook his head slowly. Because I've been trained for years not to feel. Not to react, to survive. That's not survival, Jihoon, I said. That's erasure. He didn't argue. I'm sorry, he said again. Quieter this time. Not just for that room. For all of it. Something in his tone cracked the wall I'd been bracing against. And for the first time in days, I believed him. I sat there, letting his words settle, and the memories started to string themselves together into something I hadn't been willing to see before. Back then I thought I was imagining it. The way Jihoon would finish a show, still catching his breath after 2 hours of breaking hearts, and yet still take the time to bow and thank every crew member. Always polite, always perfect. But when he reached me, something shifted. It was small things. An extra second before he moved on. A handshake that lingered just long enough to notice. Sometimes he'd press a cold water bottle into my hand. His smile so bright it could have powered half of Seoul. Sometimes he'd say my name in a way that felt like it belonged only to him. I told myself not to read into it. That it was just fan service, habit, politeness. That it was safer to pretend he treated everyone the same than risk believing otherwise. Safer to stay invisible than to be wrong. But now, hearing him say it out loud, I've been thinking about you since the first time I saw you. I realized maybe I hadn't imagined any of it. And that possibility terrified me more than the idea that I'd been delusional. We sat in silence. 2 half-empty ramen bowls cooling on the table between us. The air smelled like broth and something unspoken. Jihoon was curled into the corner of my couch, bare feet tucked under him, my old graphic tee hanging loose on his shoulders. He looked like he belonged there, and that unsettled me most of all. I took a slow breath, still trying to figure out what this was, what we were and how far I was willing to let myself fall. So what now? Jihoon stared at the table, picking at the edge of the sleeve he wore. I don't know, he said. The photo hasn't leaked yet. The company says they're containing it. They're handling it. Whatever that means. I nodded slowly. And you? What does handling it mean for you? He looked over at me. It means I keep pretending nothing happened. Smile in rehearsals. Stay quiet, be perfect. I didn't respond. I just reached for the empty ramen bowl and stacked it over mine. What about you? He asked. What are you going to do now, for work I mean? I hesitated. Not sure yet. I can help. I know people. I could make some calls. He said again. I'm good. I said. Maybe too quickly. I'll figure it out. His phone buzzed on the table, the sudden vibration cutting through the quiet like a pebble hitting glass. The screen lit with a name I didn't know, but the way his eyes flicked to it told me enough. My manager, he said quietly, as if saying it any louder might summon the man into my apartment. He was already standing before I could respond, a kind of resignation in the set of his shoulders. I rose too,
not even thinking about it, just reacting, like maybe if I stayed level with him he wouldn't leave so fast. He reached the door, hand closing around the knob, and then he stopped, turned, 2 strides, and he was there. Close enough that the warmth from his body hit me a second before his arms did. The hug came all at once. No testing, no hesitation, just this fierce bone-deep pull that locked me in place. His hands pressed flat against my back, his grip almost desperate, like if he let go too soon, the world might swallow him whole. He buried his face into the crook of my neck, the damp tips of his hair brushing my jaw. His voice was muffled but steady. "I'm sorry. Not for the kiss, never for that, but for everything else." And I believed him, not because the words were perfect, but because of the way he held me, like someone trying to memorize the shape of safety. When he finally let go, it felt abrupt, like stepping out of sunlight into shadow. He pulled the hood of my sweatshirt up, tugged on a black mask that wiped him into anonymity, and slipped out the door without a backward glance. The latch clicked shut. I stayed where I was, staring at the door, feeling the phantom weight of his arms still locked around me. My chest was tight, not from the hug, but from everything it dragged up with it. I sank onto the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor like it might offer answers. My apartment smelled faintly of him now, shampoo, rain, and something warm I couldn't name. It was proof he'd been here, and yet part of me still wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. Because in my world, people like Jihoon didn't knock on your door. They didn't stand in your living room dripping rainwater and regret. They didn't hug you like you were the last safe place on earth. And yet he had, which meant something was changing. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for the version of my life where this was real.
For the next few weeks, life pretended to go back to normal. I pretended too. I started applying for jobs outside of entertainment, industries that wouldn't chew me up and spit me out. Safer industries. Duller ones. Local news stations where the most scandalous thing you saw was a cat stuck in a tree. Translation offices with cubicles and vending machines and quiet corridors where no one cared about lighting angles or how much you smiled. I wanted nothing to do with spotlights, screaming fans, or the kind of fragile manufactured reality where one wrong breath could make you an enemy. I shaved, cleaned the apartment until it smelled like lemon disinfectant, reorganized my bookshelves, took long walks, answered my mother's calls instead of letting them ring out. On paper, I was stabilizing, healing, finding something that could be called normal again. Except it wasn't normal. Because in the middle of all that domestic, sensible routine, there was this glowing, impossible fact I couldn't scrub out. The top K-pop idol in the country had kissed me. Not a passing drunken mistake. Not a dare. He'd said he wanted to. That he'd wanted to for a long time. And I'd felt it. God, I'd felt it. The way he'd pulled me in like he was done caring about the rules. I told myself not to think too far ahead. Not to build castles in my head about what that meant. I didn't even know if Jihoon and I existed in any way that could survive daylight, but I couldn't stop replaying it in flashes. His voice when he said my name, the press of his hand at my back, the way his hoodie still smelled faintly of rain when I found it on the couch the next morning. It was stupid, giddy, the kind of thing that made my stomach flip in one breath and clench with anxiety in the next. Because if he could want me enough to cross that line, what else could he risk? And what could it cost? I'd catch myself smiling at nothing while making coffee, then immediately feel the weight of 100 invisible eyes as if the world already knew. Like a scandal was brewing in the walls, and all I could do was wait for the cracks to show. So I kept moving through the days, acting like nothing had changed while knowing deep down that everything had. The first time Jihoon came back, it wasn't dramatic. No calls beforehand, no reason given. Just a knock at my door one evening, and him standing there, hands shoved deep into his hoodie pocket, mask hiding most of his face. I stepped aside without thinking. He walked in like it was the most natural thing in the world. The first few nights after that were awkward, careful, like we were both pretending not to hear the crunch of broken glass underfoot. He'd show up at my door in a hoodie and mask, moving like a shadow that had forgotten how to be human. We'd keep it minimal. Heated leftovers, muted TV reruns, the occasional shoulder bump on the couch. The first few nights Jihoon came back, it was awkward, careful, like we were both pretending not to hear the crunch of broken glass underfoot. He'd show up at my door in a hoodie and mask, moving like a shadow that had forgotten how to be human. We'd keep it minimal. Heated leftovers, muted TV reruns, the occasional shoulder bump on the couch. Not online, not in whispers, not even in the back alley gossip blogs that made their money on speculation. I guess the company had handled it, erased it before it could be born. I didn't know whether to be relieved or unsettled. How many other things like that had been buried for idols? How many messy human moments had been scrubbed out of existence so they could keep floating in the clean, impossible air their fans believed in? Either way, I was grateful. And somewhere in that quiet relief, life with Jihoon started taking shape. By the third week, he stopped knocking. My apartment became his hideout, the place he could drop the mask, literally and otherwise. He'd pad barefoot across my floors, drink my coffee, fall asleep with the TV still on. Sometimes we talked until 2 in the morning. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, and the silence felt just as full. The shift came on a Tuesday night when he dug out my old PlayStation controller and waved it at me. FIFA. Loser does dishes. That's not fair, I told him. You've got the reflexes of someone who's been dancing on stage since middle school. Scared? He teased. He cheated. I let him. And when he laughed, really laughed, it felt like the first time he'd meant it in months. Something loosened between us after that. The games became a ritual. Sometimes FIFA, sometimes silly Korean games I'd never played before. Like Baskin-Robbins 31, where you counted numbers until you hit the cursed one, and the loser had to suffer some mock humiliation. Jihoon had a surprisingly competitive streak. He hated losing, which only made it funnier when he did. One night, after he lost 3 rounds in a row and had to dramatically pretend to weep into a throw pillow, I decided to change the rules. All right, I said, tossing the controller onto the coffee table. New game. 20 questions. No passes. No lying. He arched an eyebrow. No lying. You're assuming I lie to you. I grinned. I'm assuming you're an idol. You tend to bend the truth. That's your whole job. He smirked but settled deeper into the couch, legs stretched out like he owned the place. Fine. Ask. I started simple. Some things I already knew, just wanted to get him talking. Favorite color? Gray. Least favorite food? Raw onions. Biggest fear? That you're about to start psychoanalyzing me. We went back and forth like that, half banter, half truth, until I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Tell me something no one knows about you. He hesitated this time. Not long. Just enough for me to notice. Then he said, I'm terrible with birthdays. I forget my own members sometimes. And I'm messy. Like actual hurricane messy. My room at the dorm looks like a crime scene if you open the door too fast. I laughed. That's good. Makes you human. The more I got to know Jihoon, the real Jihoon, the more I learned that he wasn't this flawless, mysterious figure from the stage. He left socks in random places. He burned rice once and tried to hide the smell with cologne. He talked in his sleep. Somehow all of it just made him better. I let the moment stretch before I went for the bigger question. When did you know you liked guys? He snorted immediately. You think you're my gay awakening? I grinned. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously. He laughed, shaking his head. Nope, I was 16. Saw this drama, Summer's Last Rain, and the lead, Han Jae-min. God, that man was unfair. I'd watch his scenes and wonder what it'd be like to kiss him. And then in the next episode I'd see the female lead, Seo Yuna, and think the same thing. So, yeah, didn't really help me figure much out. I chuckled. Ah, I get it. Han Jae-min's hot. And that drama, please. It was like 10% plot, 90% turning him into everyone's wet dream. Jihoon's smile softened. Exactly. From then on, the questions got sillier. We learned things about each other we didn't need to know, like that Jihoon always peeled his tangerines in one long spiral, and that I could juggle exactly 3 apples before breaking something. Somewhere along the way, my apartment stopped feeling like my apartment. It became ours, a small, private country with its own rules, where the world outside didn't matter. After game night, you would think we had some big turning point, that we'd start tearing each other's clothes off, or declaring love like a drama finale. We didn't. Oh, but we did. Kissed again, twice. Once on his 3rd visit, when we were standing by the door saying goodnight, and it just happened. Soft, unhurried, almost a question. The 2nd time was a week later, when he won at FIFA and leaned in with that smug, this is my prize grin. Both kisses stayed light, careful, and both times we stepped back like we'd silently agreed not to push further. No labels, no definitions, just this mutual understanding that we wanted each other close, and that was enough for now. And then came that night. He arrived late, hoodie up, eyes tired. I could see it before he even spoke. The slow, heavy way he crossed the room, the slump in his shoulders. He didn't flop onto the couch so much as fold into it. You look like someone wrung you out and forgot to hang you up to dry, I muttered, handing him a glass of water. He chuckled weakly. Preparing for the tour, so dance practice for 4 hours, 2 hours in studio, and then a shoot, then wardrobe fittings. I hesitated for a beat, then stepped behind him, resting my hands lightly on his shoulders. You want a massage? I started slow, testing the knots beneath my fingers. His muscles were tense, rigid, like they were still mid-choreography. My thumbs worked into them, coaxing the tension loose, inch by inch. He let out a low sigh, then a soft groan that sent a shiver down my spine. God, that feels good, he murmured, eyelids half closed. Don't stop. My hands slid lower, tracing the curve of his back, the press of his ribs. He shifted and turned, meeting my gaze with eyes that carried more truth than words ever could. Here's one thing you should know about Jihoon. That man was beautiful, not the kind of pretty you find on filtered magazine covers, though he was on those too. He'd graced the covers of Vogue Korea, Esquire, GQ, Dazed. They called him the face of modern soul, an icon of elegance, sexy without effort, ethereal when he wanted to be. But it wasn't just the bone structure or the fame. It was the way he looked at you. Those eyes, dark, piercing, slightly upturned, like every emotion could rest just beneath them, pulled you in like riptides. And in that moment, they were looking only at me. Heavy, tired, hungry. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. That look reached into something low and reckless in me, and it pulled, Before I knew it, I was kissing him. He tasted like mint and adrenaline, like bottled exhaustion and something deeper, something that had waited too long. He gasped against my mouth, his fingers knotting in the front of my hoodie. I pressed in closer, one hand at the nape of his neck, the other sliding beneath his shirt to feel the warmth of his back. He tugged me downward, and we landed together on the couch, tangled limbs and breathless tension. I could feel the warmth of him through the thin space between us, the quiet rise and fall of his chest beneath my palm. His breath caught when I pressed closer, and the sound lodged itself in me like a hook I'd never shake free. We moved together like we were afraid of the moment ending. It wasn't love, not yet. But it wasn't casual either. It lived in that fragile space between denial and confession, where every glance meant something and nothing at the same time. We didn't talk about it afterward, but it didn't stop. It happened again and again. No dating, no titles, no declarations. Just a rhythm we couldn't break, sometimes urgent, sometimes slow, always quiet, always in the safety of shadows. It was exhilarating, like living inside a secret I'd never dared to dream would be mine, because this was Jihoon, my crush. The man I'd watched from a distance, thinking I'd never even brush shoulders with him, let alone this. Every time it happened, some part of me still couldn't believe it was real. It was terrifying too, because I knew what it cost to want someone like him, and I knew I couldn't keep him. And yet every time I told myself it would be the last, he'd show up again with that hoodie, that sigh and that look like I was the only place he could breathe. It didn't help that I was starting to want more, and Jihoon wasn't letting go. Then came the threat. I didn't find out from him. Not directly. Jihoon stopped showing up and I thought maybe that was his way of saying goodbye. I told myself to respect it. Told myself to move on. I told myself to respect it. To move forward. To live like before. So I tried. I started saying yes when friends asked me out for drinks, sitting in noisy bars where music thudded against my ribs. I went to interviews in stiff shirts that didn't quite feel like mine. I filled my calendar with things. Coffee dates, errands, even a pottery class I'd always said I didn't have time for. Anything to keep my hands busy. Anything to make the apartment feel less empty. A few days after that, the text came, from a number I didn't know. No name, no message, just an attachment. I opened it. My breath caught. A grainy photo shot through my apartment window. Jihoon on my couch, my hand in his hair, his mouth on mine. Beneath it, a single line of text. Stay away, or you get buried. The panic that rose in my throat wasn't for me. It was for him. Someone knew. Someone had seen us, and they weren't threatening him. They were threatening me. Could this be from the company? Or a sasaeng? Or the same person who took that first photo of us? Were they still following us? Had we been careless, too wrapped up in each other to notice the shadows trailing behind? And how in God's name did they know my apartment? Just as that thought came the idea that maybe they hadn't been following me at all. Maybe they'd been tracking Jihoon, watching him. Waiting for a moment like this. A dozen questions tore through me, each one sharper than the last. And in the midst of that I was worried about Jihoon. Was he safe? Did he know? Was this their first warning or their last? I sat there for hours with the message open on my phone. The image burned into my vision until I could see it even when I blinked. I read it again, and again, trying to pull something, anything, from between the lines. A clue, a name, a slip-up in their wording. Nothing. Just a digital threat wrapped in anonymity, as cold and empty as the screen it glowed on. And that helplessness, knowing I couldn't fight what I couldn't see, was worse than the fear itself. I tried to call Jihoon. The line didn't go through. I wondered if he'd gotten the same message. If he was sitting somewhere right now, phone in hand, staring at the same words, feeling the same chill in his bones. Or if he was unaware of it entirely, protected, or maybe shielded. In that way idols sometimes were. My worries were confirmed when he didn't show up that night, or the next. And just like that, the silence returned. Thicker than before. There was nothing. No explanation. No comfort. Just a warning, and Jihoon's absence. The air in the apartment shifted, turned heavy. Suddenly it felt too quiet. Too exposed, like the walls could hear my thoughts, like the city outside had eyes pressed to every window. The worst part wasn't the threat, it was the silence that followed. I hadn't realized how loud Jihoon had become in my life, not in noise but in presence, until he vanished again. No messages, no visits, no knock at my door in the middle of the night, just that one anonymous text, and the echo of him that still lingered on my couch, in my sheets, in the dent his head had left in my second pillow. And then one afternoon, over iced tea at a friend's place, someone put on a YouTube clip of Jihoon's group from a recent variety game show. Bright studio lights, laughter timed perfectly to the beat of the MC's jokes. There he was, smiling, competitive, quick with a comeback that made the others howl. He looked fine, better than fine, like nothing in the world had touched him. For a moment I almost let myself believe that was true, that maybe he was safe, that maybe the agency had already buried whatever needed burying, sealing it away with all the other secrets they must have been paid to forget. But I knew better. I knew how much of him was performance. How much was a mask stitched so tightly to his face that even happiness could look rehearsed. I couldn't stop thinking about what he might have looked like when the cameras turned off. Whether the threat had reached him, whether it had reached someone above him, and what they might have done about it. I tried to go on, applied to more jobs, ate my meals standing up, told myself he was fine, that the agency had handled it, that they'd swept it under a rug somewhere with all the other scandals they knew how to bury. But I didn't believe that, because Jihoon wasn't a scandal to them. He was an investment, a brand, a product, and someone had threatened that product. So they must have been working full-time to put this to rest, and any contact with me will be a no-no. So I stopped expecting him to reach out or even sending him any more messages. One night I finally did it. I pulled out a box from the back of my closet and started collecting the little pieces of him that had scattered through my apartment like traces of a dream. The sweatshirt he always stole, soft from too many washes, still faintly holding his scent. His dented water bottle, a USB drive I'd never dared to open but knew was his. I placed each item inside carefully, as if the wrong movement might shatter something I couldn't put back together. When the last piece was in, I closed the flaps and taped them shut, the sound of the tape tearing through the quiet like a decision made final. Then I set the box by the door like I was preparing to mail away a chapter of my life. It's better this way, I told myself. What we had was too dangerous anyway, especially in his world. I'd been living in a bubble, pretending the rules didn't apply to us, pretending we could exist in stolen hours and dimly lit corners without it ever catching up to him. The silence stretched on for another week. I tried to fill it. Grocery runs, job applications, empty conversations with friends that never quite distracted me. But every night I came home and saw that box still sitting by the door, its presence a quiet reminder of everything I wasn't ready to let go of, until one afternoon, I came back from the store, a plastic bag of instant ramen and coffee clutched in my hand, and stopped cold. The box was gone. In its place, slid just beneath the edge of my door, was a small piece of paper folded neatly, like someone had taken their time. I bent down, picked it up, and unfolded it slowly, my pulse thrumming in my ears. One sentence, scribbled in blue ink, in handwriting I knew better than my own. I'm sorry I had to disappear, that was it. No name, no explanation, just a whisper of regret and a space where his voice used to be. I sat with it in my hand, my chest hollow. Because what they don't tell you about falling for someone out of reach isn't just that it's hard, it's that once you've touched them, you can't forget the shape they left behind. And Jihoon had left his shape in me. I thought that would be the end, but it was only the beginning. Because the next morning I woke up to a knock on my door. It wasn't Jihoon, wasn't a package, not even a neighbor, but two men in dark suits, one with a badge clipped to his jacket. Mr. Tyler Darnell, the taller one asked. I nodded. We need to speak with you, the other said, his voice flat, unreadable. They stepped forward, and I knew. The secret wasn't a secret anymore. They didn't handcuff me, they didn't raise their voices, they didn't even tell me why they were there. Not at first. Just two men in tailored suits, polite but firm, walking me to a black sedan with tinted windows and diplomatic silence. It wasn't police, and it wasn't a ride I could refuse. I sat in the back seat while the city passed by like a dream I was slowly waking from. We weren't heading toward a station. I knew that route too well. No, we were going deeper into Gangnam, toward the corporate part of the skyline, toward HNJ. When the car pulled into the underground garage, the doors locked automatically. They didn't speak until we were in the elevator. It would be best if you didn't speak until spoken to, the shorter one said, without looking at me. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to ask what the hell this was, but I didn't. We exited on a private executive floor, not the one from before. This one was quieter, colder, more expensive. They led me into a conference room so pristine it didn't look like humans had ever used it. The table was a long slab of black marble. The chairs were leather. The air smelled like chilled citrus and tension. She was already there. Silver blazer, red nails. Same woman from the first time. She didn't offer a greeting, didn't offer a seat. Mr. Darnell, she said, with that same blade-thin voice. We have a problem. I stared at her. Did Jihoon send you? Her eyes flickered. This isn't about Mr. Kang. This is about you. She placed a tablet on the table and slid it toward me. On screen was the photo. The photo, clearer now, color corrected, zoomed in. My fingers in Jihoon's hair, his mouth on mine, lit by the glow of my apartment window. This image was sent anonymously to our press contact, our board, and to several third-party sponsors, she said calmly. So far we've silenced it, but the next leak might not be so containable. My throat dried. I didn't take it. I didn't send it. I didn't. We're aware, she cut in. This isn't an accusation, it's a warning. I looked at her, eyes narrowed. Warning me of what? Of what happens when a scandal becomes a liability. That silence again, the kind that hums beneath the skin. Where is he? I asked quietly. She didn't blink. That's not your concern. I stepped forward. He's a grown man, you don't get to hide him. We don't hide him. We protect him, from people who don't understand the weight of his name, the cost of his image. I don't need anyone to tell me who she was referring to when she said that, and that made my blood buzzed. He's not your product. He's a person. She smiled, almost sadly. He stopped being a person when he became a god, and gods, Mr. Darnell, don't get to fall. I clenched my fists.
So what happens now? She leaned in slightly, her voice lowering. You disappear. For good this time. We've arranged an NDA, updated. A settlement. A relocation package. I stared at her. You want me to leave the country. We want you to vanish before you destroy what remains of his career. My stomach dropped. Does he know you're doing this? She didn't answer. And suddenly, I realized he probably didn't. They were protecting their investment. But who was protecting him? The offer sat in front of me. An NDA longer than most novels. A check with more zeros than I knew what to do with. And a one-way ticket to New York tucked neatly in a branded envelope. It was everything they thought I wanted. A clean slate. A fresh start. A silent exile. I didn't sign. Not because I wanted to be a hero. Not because I had a plan. But because I couldn't live knowing I walked away while Jihoon was still trapped in that golden cage. Still being handled like a fragile object instead of a living, breaking person. I'm not signing anything, I said, pushing the envelope back across the table. The woman, Miss Kwan, I finally remembered, smiled without humor. You should think carefully. Your visa can be revoked. Your work history. You think I care about a resume right now. You think I give a damn about your PR. Her eyes hardened. We are offering you protection. No, you're offering to bury me. Just like you're burying him. I stood. She didn't stop me. By the time I left the building, my hands were shaking. My lungs felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with sprinting. It was a pressure that lived behind my ribs and wouldn't quit until I did something. My head was a bright, jagged clarity. I had to find Jihoon. Not the idol wrapped in PR and choreography. Not the brand with a manager's number on speed dial. I needed the man who'd come to my door with rain in his eyes and apology on his tongue. The one who, when he looked at me, made the rest of the world feel thin and unreal. I didn't know where he lived. I had never been inside his building, and I'd never asked. Idols keep their addresses like sacred things. Even as crew, you learn to respect the lines. So I did the only stupid, stubborn things a person does when they're afraid. I started knocking on doors that might lead to him.
I turned back to the building till I located a security guard I was familiar with, but he was no help. Can't help with that, he said. His tone didn't need to be translated. I tried to press, to tell him I wasn't a gossip-hungry fan, that this was about safety, but the guard's posture closed like a lid. He had protocols. Next was the venue where they'd been on tour last. Gemsel, the kind of place that eats people whole and spits out press releases. Backstage smelled like duct tape and sweat and burnt coffee. Techs I'd worked with before gave me sympathetic looks and then shook their heads. His group left with the van after the show, one said. All I know. The words were soft but absolute. I clutched at them like a rope and came up empty-handed. I tried the dorms they'd used between schedules, some temporary group lodgings the agency kept on retainer. A stylist I'd freelanced with recognized my name and then looked suddenly careful. You should let the agency handle this. It's about the threat, right? She said. I was shocked she knew, and still I asked if she knew their next schedule, because my mouth wanted to demand more than policy could allow. She gave me a pitying smile and walked me to the door as far as she could. No answer. I ran into a vocal coach we'd swapped favors with once. He listened, fingers worrying the edge of his teacup, and then told me he hadn't seen Jihoon in days. They pull the artists if something comes up, he said. It's safer. Safer. The word felt like a thud in my chest. Safer for whom? Every lead dissolved like breath in cold air. Each no built a wall around me until I was boxed in with my own worst thoughts. Was I trying too hard? Should I just accept the company's offer and leave? Will it be cruel of me to do so? It's not like I have a plan or anything, nor am I powerful enough to do anything for him. But still, the fact that I have yet to see Jihoon on any live shows or any media presences for almost a week now is getting me more worried than I want to. I even asked my friends in the industry to help without divulging too much, teased information out of people I shouldn't have, collected scraps of rumor and rumor's echo. But nothing, and after a week of that futile flailing, of moving through normal life like a ghost at a funeral, I climbed the stairs to my apartment and saw him. He was standing there. Jihoon. No hoodie, no mask, no PR sculpted smile, just him. Hair flattened from sweat or maybe rain, eyes dark and hollow like he hadn't slept in days, shoulders hunched forward like the world had finally won. My keys dropped from my hand. He didn't move, didn't say a word, and for a moment I wasn't sure he was real. I thought maybe my brain had conjured him, a final illusion before I gave up completely. But then he exhaled, shaky, raw, and his lips parted. You didn't sign, did you? No. Knowing he was referring to the NDA and the company's offer. He nodded, then gestured to the door. I rushed to have it open, and then without another word he stepped past me, into the apartment, into the same space that had once made him feel safe. But he didn't make it more than a few feet. He stopped near the wall, swaying slightly, and when I reached for him, he let himself fall against me. Not gracefully, not like those rehearsed collapses in his music videos. This was real, heavy, raw. He buried his face in my shoulder and clung like the weight of his world had finally buckled his knees. His breath hitched once, then again, and I felt his shoulders shake. A sound escaped him. Not loud, not broken for show. Just a small, strangled thing. Pain, compressed and quiet, like he'd been holding it in too long. And then he was crying. Really crying. I wrapped my arms around him, one hand at the back of his neck, the other across his back, grounding him. His tears soaked through my shirt, but I didn't care. He gripped my sleeves like I was the only solid thing left. And in that moment I knew I wasn't going anywhere. He didn't need someone to save him, he needed someone to see him. So I held him, and held him, until his breath slowed, until his fists loosened, until we were just two people standing still in a room that had already seen too much. Because someone had to. And if not me, then who? After the tears dried, we didn't fall into silence. Not right away. We sat close, knees almost touching on my couch. Two people who had already said too much, but somehow hadn't said enough. The weight of everything between us sat heavy, but not unbearable. What are the odds of this happening? Jihoon murmured, voice hoarse, lips curved into something too sad to be a smile. I let out a breath of disbelief, like something out of a Wattpad fever dream. Idol falls for broke tech guy? He laughed just a little, except the part where they get a happy ending. Hey! I nudged his foot with mine, don't count us out yet. He turned to look at me, really look at me, and for a moment I almost believed we had time, that we had choices. I just want you to know, I said softly. I'm not delusional, I know what this is, what you are, what you mean to millions of people. I'm not expecting some fairy tale. I just hope whatever happens we come out of it as friends. He tilted his head. Friends? Yes, you know the kind that maybe once knew how to hold each other. I replied, the kind who don't pretend none of it happened. He was quiet for a beat. You're the only real thing I've had in years, he whispered. I touched his knee. I am still here anytime you need me, okay? I just wanted to be sure you are okay. He nodded slowly. You'll still text me? Even if I'm busy? Even if I don't always reply right away? I replied back, I'll text you, only if you promise me you'll focus on the tour, and give your best not letting in form of threat derail you in any way. He smiled softly, and leaned in slowly, cautiously, like he was asking permission without words. I knew what he wanted by that, and the world be damned, I was honored to give it to him. Our lips met in a kiss that was nothing like the ones before. There was no heat, no desperation, just something quiet, unfolding, full. His mouth was warm and careful, the kiss lingering like a held breath between storms. Felt his hand at the back of my neck, gentle, grounding. I leaned into it, not needing to pull him closer. He was already there, entirely. My hand found his jaw, fingertips brushing the edge of his ear, and he tilted into the touch like he'd been waiting for it. Like it meant more than anything either of us could say aloud. He kissed me like someone memorizing a feeling he'd have to give up, and I kissed him back like someone who already missed it. We stayed like that for a long moment, eyes closed, skin touching, breath steady and shared. Nothing else existed but the quiet promise that we were here, for now, together. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't make goodbye harder later. The next day, Jihoon flew out for the tour. For the first time in a long time, I watched him from the same place the rest of the world did, through a screen. And what a view it was. Jihoon didn't just perform, he reigned. The tour kicked off in Osaka, then Taipei, then Singapore, and each night the clips would flood Twitter and TikTok like clockwork. Sold-out domes, oceans of light sticks pulsing in sync, fans screaming his name in perfect pitch, in every language. He moved like he was made of something other than muscle and bone, graceful, explosive, untouchable. His voice hit notes that didn't feel real. The new single climbed charts in a dozen countries within hours. His outfits trended. His airport walks went viral. Every night someone posted a fan cam that hit 1 million views before sunrise. And yet late at night, between cities, he still texted me. Not much. Just enough. Just landed. Long day. Wish I was on your couch instead. Did you eat today? Sometimes I replied. Sometimes I stared at the screen too long, unsure what to say. He was shining, brighter than ever. And then just as his star seemed to hit its highest point, just as the world bowed at his feet, it happened. Someone posted the photo. A new version this time, sharper, deliberate. No grain, no distance, just us. Caught in the soft gold spill of my apartment window, the kind of light that made everything look warmer than it really was. Jihoon's mouth on mine, his hand cupping my cheek like it was the most natural place in the world for it to be. His eyes were closed, his expression unguarded, like he belonged nowhere else but there. It was unmistakably him. Every line of his face, every detail crisp. But mine was half in shadow, turned just enough that my features blurred into anonymity. You could tell there was someone he was kissing. You just couldn't tell who. It hit the internet like fire on dry grass. The account that posted it was anonymous. No bio, no posts before that one. But the caption was loud enough. Top idol getting it on with mystery man. Exclusive leak. You saw it here first. The retweets were instant. The theories even faster. The hashtags turned rabid. My chest tightened as I watched the reactions come in like waves. Some defending him, most demanding answers. Who was the man? Was it real? When did it happen? Was Jihoon gay? Was this the reason he wasn't dating anyone publicly? Then the company stepped in. HNJ Entertainment official statement. The photo circulating online is a fabricated and malicious attempt to slander our artist. Mr. Kang Jihoon denies any involvement and has no personal relationship with the individual depicted. Legal action will be taken. And just like that, the knife twisted. The picture was real. I knew it. Jihoon knew it. But the world had been told it wasn't. And Jihoon? He hadn't said a word. Not like I was expecting him to anyway, until my phone lit up, and his voice came through a voice note, fragile and shaking. I think I want to tell them the truth. That was what he said, voice low and frayed through the phone. I sat there, listening to him from the floor of my apartment, surrounded by the glow of my laptop, headlines still swirling like vultures. The fandom was at war. Some were screaming that it was fake, edited, AI generated, a witch hunt. Others were convinced this was the long-suspected truth. Fan pages started investigating, zooming in, comparing photos of his jawline, his ears, his posture. Reddit threads popped up overnight, thousands of comments deep. They hadn't found me. Not really. My face was mostly shadow, turned slightly away from the lens. But Jihoon's? It was clear. Crystal clear. Top idol getting it on with secret boyfriend. That was the headline that broke Twitter. The photo went viral in under an hour. YouTube channels were speculating. Sponsorships were pulled. Hashtags exploded and crashed. I read it all, and for the first time I saw it from the outside. What we looked like, what he looked like, caught in the arms of someone who didn't belong in that world. The fantasy had cracked open, and the reality underneath was brutal. This wasn't just a scandal. It was career-ending. For him. And what were we? Really. We hadn't called it love. We didn't know what it was. Maybe it was lust. Maybe loneliness. Maybe Jihoon just wanted something real after years of being someone else. And maybe I just wanted to be seen by someone who shined like he did. But now the world was watching, and they weren't kind. Just then I received another anonymous text. This time it wasn't a blurry photo, no cryptic half-threats, just a single line that made my stomach turn. I warned you. Get ready to be burned. My hands went cold, but my chest felt like it was on fire. The internet was already in chaos from the leaked picture, and now this. I didn't know who was behind it, a Sasang, the company, or the same shadow who'd been watching us from the start. But they weren't done. And then the comments started. One in particular was climbing through the feeds like wildfire. Wanna know who the other guy in that picture is? I know, but I won't tell. Here's a hint. He works in HJN company, or used to. It was the kind of post you could feel breathing down your neck. People were already arguing over it. Some dismissing it as a troll, others defending it like gospel. But what made my blood run colder was a smaller thread forming underneath. I know someone who can pull the employment records of everyone who's quit HJN in the past year. The internet didn't need to be right. It just needed to be relentless. And once it decided to find you, it was better equipped than the FBI. In the middle of this chaos, my inbox pinged. An email. A job offer. Out of the dozens I'd sent in the last few months, this was the first real bite. A production tech position for a network in China. On paper, it was exactly what I'd been hoping for. In reality, it felt like the universe sliding a key into my palm and quietly saying, run. Because if the internet found out it was me in that photo, if they tore into my life the way they could, my world wouldn't just shift. It would burn. And maybe leaving was the only way to stop the fire before it started. So when Jihoon said he wanted to tell the truth, a whole swarm of emotions hit me at once. Fear, sharp and immediate, because I knew exactly what that truth would cost him. Pride, because part of me couldn't believe that someone like him would risk everything just to stand beside me. And somewhere in the mess, a dangerous flicker of happiness, because the idea of him choosing me openly, without shame, was the kind of fantasy I'd never dared to keep. But right behind it came the weight of reality. The industry that owned him. The faceless crowd ready to devour him if he stepped 1 inch out of line. And me, someone with no shield, no PR team, no power, standing at the center of a storm that was already starting to spin. That's why I agreed to meet him one last time, somewhere no one could see us, somewhere we could breathe, if only for an hour. We ended up in the back of a Nora bong closed for renovation. The air smelled faintly of dust and leftover cigarette smoke, the kind of place where the world outside felt miles away. Dim light, a scratchy couch with duct tape along the seams. Jihoon sat hunched in the corner, hoodie pulled over his face like he could hide from the universe. I'll say it was real, he said before I could even sit down. His voice was steady, but his hands gave him away, tugging at the hem of his sleeve. I'll tell them everything. If I lose everything, at least it's my choice. I just stood there for a second looking at him. Really looking at him. You're not thinking clearly. I am. You're not, I whispered. Because if you were, you'd know I'm not worth it. He blinked at me. Don't say that, I continued. I mean it. This thing between us, it was beautiful, but it wasn't built to survive out there. I don't care, he replied almost immediately. I do. This isn't worth the legacy you have built all these years with your blood, sweat, and tears. I let the silence hang for a beat as I watched as the harsh reality from my words sink into him, then asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind for weeks. Are you in love with me? Silence. He looked down. I don't know, he said. Quiet, honest, and strangely, it didn't hurt. Because I didn't know if I am either. I smiled. Exactly. He nodded. Just once. Eyes glassy. I want you to release the statement, I said. Say it's fake. Say it was edited. Let it go. He started to protest, but I touched his hand. I'm leaving Korea. I got a job offer. China. Production tech for a network. It's a good deal. He swallowed, his eyes flickering like he was searching for the right thing to say but kept coming up empty. So this is goodbye? I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him. Really looked at him. His face was drawn with exhaustion, not just from the sleepless nights or the endless schedule, but from the emotional toll of living in two worlds. One where he was worshipped, and one where he was real. I think it has to be, I said finally. At least, like this. His shoulders dropped a little. Not dramatically, just enough to show he already knew. But not forever, I added, softer. Just from the fantasy. He nodded, eyes glassy, lips parting like he wanted to say something else but couldn't. So I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around him. And this time, he didn't hesitate. He buried his face in my shoulder again, arms locked around my waist like he needed to hold on to something, just for a little longer. We stood like that, unmoving, wrapped in a silence so full it ached. I didn't kiss him. We didn't cry. We just held on. And then I let go first. The next morning I went back to that same building, the agency tower where all of this had started. This time I didn't pace in the lobby, didn't hesitate in front of the elevators like the air might turn against me. I moved through it like I'd been rehearsing for months, because maybe in some way I had. The ride to the top floor felt shorter than it should have, a smooth glide that ended with a soft chime. Ms. Kwan was waiting, already perched behind her desk, encased in her armor of gray silk and practiced indifference. She greeted me with a nod, not a smile. The NDA sat between us, printed in duplicate, heavier than the last one, like the weight of the paper itself understood what it was erasing. I didn't ask questions. I didn't bargain. I skimmed the first page, flipped through the rest, and picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake, but something deep inside me did. I signed. Not because I'd given up, not because I didn't still care, but because I knew someone had to protect what little was left. Jihoon couldn't weather another scandal, not with the machine already tightening around him, and I refused to be the anchor dragging him under. Miss Kwan slid a check across the table, crisp and impersonal. I pushed it back. This was never about the money, I said. She didn't argue. Just folded the check into a leather folder like we'd both agreed to erase it. Outside, Seoul carried on without me, traffic pressing forward, voices spilling down the sidewalks. The city had always been good at moving on. Jihoon's statement came the next day. The circulating photo has been altered and was manipulated. I understand the confusion it may have caused, and I sincerely apologize to my fans for any concern. Your trust and support mean more to me than I can express, and I will continue to dedicate myself fully to my work and to bringing you music and performances you can be proud of. Thank you for always standing by me. He looked composed, warm, even. Every word measured, every smile calibrated, the perfect idol once more. The fandom clung to the lie like it was a lifeline. Some called the scandal fake, some still doubted, but most moved on, because that's what the world does. I watched from my apartment, suitcase half packed. 3 weeks later, I boarded a flight to Shanghai. I didn't cry. I didn't text him goodbye. Some things you only get to survive by walking away. They were right to tell us not to touch the idol. He'll shine too bright, and you might burn just trying to hold him. Thanks for listening to the story Don't Touch the Idol. If you enjoy this story, share your enthusiasm in the comment section and don't forget to hit the subscribe and notification button so you don't miss any story uploads. See you in the next one.